Okay, so before we get too far into this new video, I'm letting you know right now there will be spoilers. There's a mechanical spoiler right now for the game on screen that you probably just saw, you probably have questions about. I will not be going over any mechanical spoilers in this video. If you do decide to stick around though, we will be talking about every new enemy that showed up in Tears of the Kingdom. We will not be talking too much about moblins or bokoblins or lizalfos or tutus or anything that showed up in the previous game because you already know how to defeat them. If you don't, you probably need to go play Breath of the Wild. With that being said, let's get into the video. Oh no. Not again. Okay, something I do want to try. Maybe these guys with these baskets of fire flowers on them, that might be ignitable. Oh, this is what we're doing, gang? You're gonna auto save me right here to be fucking one shot over and over again? Okay, so now that all the warnings are out of the way, let me introduce myself. I'm Shadowmere with Memoria Gaming, and I'll be guiding you through all of the new enemies that Tears of the Kingdom has to throw at you. We're going to start with basic enemies, work our way up to new area bosses. There will be no story spoilers in this video, but we will be talking about at least one dungeon boss as he does show up outside of his dungeon, and if you run into him, you will really regret not knowing what to do against this enemy. With that being said, we're going to start with constructs. Constructs come in many shapes and forms, but mostly stick to the Sky Islands and shrines. Sometimes you'll find a pack of them to defeat, and when you do, a chest will open up with some goodies inside. Constructs, and all enemies for that matter, drop horns upon defeat that can be used with fuse to add power to your weapons. They usually drop other useful drops too, such as Zonai weapons that are powerful. They're not wood, so they won't burn, and they don't conduct electricity because they're not made out of metal. That other enemies in the games like Lizalfos usually drop. They also drop Zonai charges, which have a multitude of uses ranging from extending your battery with an extra yellow charge, kind of like how when you cook food, they give you yellow hearts or stamina wheels. And once they're used, they have to be extended to give new charges. And they're also used for getting Zonai devices from dispensers all over the map. The best way to kill these guys is to watch for an opening to shield bash, flurry rush, and get in and start attacking that way. Or, even easier, shoot their red eyes with a bow to knock them down and stun them. Larger constructs can fuse and will attack indiscriminately, and other constructs have larger horns going all the way up to level 4, and they'll add tons of damage to base weapons with fuse. You can see here this Zonai construct is inside of a shrine. He's going to be teaching us how to use different, well, I guess in this one it's just a massacre. We're just going to shoot this guy over and over again, but this is mostly what the Zonai constructs look like and act like, so you can expect to see them pretty much all over the place. Okay, next up is going to be a really weird new enemy called Booble Frogs. Now, Booble Frogs tend to show up inside of caves, wells, and just anywhere underground that is not inside of the depths. They look like they're related to Satori in some way. They are shaped exactly like him. They glow white. They have like 6 eyes. They have little feathers. And when they die, a small bloopy will run away. I've personally never been able to hit this bloopy, but they do run off, and I'm pretty sure if you are able to hit them, they'll drop some money for you. With that being said, Booble Frogs serve one purpose in this game, and that is as a collectible. They drop a Booble Gem upon death, which you will give to a certain character later on in the game, who will grant you different items. We are talking the Bokoblin mask, the Lionel mask, stuff like that, but also a new set of gear. Now, I'll go over this gear later on, but it basically works like the magic armor from Twilight Princess. There's around 46 that you need to get all of the main rewards. And then after that, if you're feeling really spicy, you can get the rest of them. Around 200 total Boople gems. And that will net you a new sailcloth based off Satori. Now we're going to start getting into Tears of the Kingdom's Nightmare Fuel. Meet your new worst enemy, Horriblins. Horriblins are what you get when you meme about Link fusing 20 spears together to poke Ganondorf to death from the other side of the map. Apparently Nintendo heard all of you and made an enemy that crawls around on the ceiling like Spider Pig, swings 12 foot of wood at you to make sure you can't approach him. They are absolutely horrible to look at, and they travel in packs, in case that wasn't bad enough. The best way to kill these guys is usually with a bomb arrow. Once they're stunned, they stay on the ground for a little bit, giving you plenty of time to counterattack to finish them off, or again, use your bow, pick them off, shoot them in that big honker of a nose that they got, and they'll usually stay out of your face after that. Be sure you check any caves that have Horriblins in them though, as they usually leave behind loot, a chest, meat, bright seeds, anything that could be useful in your journey. They have these little outcroppings that you can use Ascend on, and they usually have some pretty good loot inside of it. So I know you're looking at this gigantic leech that's hanging on the ceiling, and you've got to be wondering, Shadowmere, what is this thing? And I'm going to let you just find out. Just give it just a second. Because I didn't believe these were back in the game either. And you'll have to forgive my weight. Nintendo has taught me in a Zelda game, if anything opens its mouth, a bomb goes inside of it. So I am clearly waiting for the opportunity to just blow this thing away. And there it is. Any second now. The payoff will be worth it. I promise you. That's right. You just read this correctly. That was a like. You know those nasty amorphous blobs that we used to fight in older Zelda games that if you got too close they would eat your shield? Or in the 3D games like Ocarina of Time, they would eat your clothes? And if you didn't defeat them fast enough, they would keep it? So yeah, likes make a return in this game. Unlike the older games, they tend to show up stationary and in packs. I have seen groups of 3 or more show up in the same concentrated area for you to deal with. You can see here in this little waterfall cave, there's 2 of them just waiting for me to walk into their jaws. Likes attack by showing you the core, and then once you attack it, they stretch out, stun, and they allow you to hit that core. But as you can see, they will stretch out right after spitting it out and try to eat you. You can struggle for a few minutes and they'll spit you out, and when that happens, you get to try and attack again. Thankfully, they do not eat anything of yours in this game, but they do spit out a chest upon defeat and usually contain a rare precious gem or a shield. Just kind of a little Easter egg to show off what they used to do in older games. Clearly, they've been doing this to the residents of Hyrule recently. Now, one of the worst things about likes in this game is that there are elemental types. They come in 3 different forms. There is a lightning, an ice, and a fire like. And they also show up in the depths covered in gloom. Now, anything in this game that shows up in the depths covered in gloom, they do 2 things. A, they hit really hard. We're talking probably double the damage of their normal above ground counterparts. But also, they will take your hearts away momentarily until you're able to heal them, either through cooking a Sunday lion or by bringing the light down into the depth areas. As you can see here, this is a lightning-like light, and it spit out little lightning balls that bounced across the floor after me. You really have to avoid those. The fire ones shoot out a small flamethrower, and the ice ones basically do the same thing, but they shoot out ice out of their mouth, and if you step into it, it'll freeze you, in which case, if it's close enough, they will eat you frozen and do more damage. Look out for likes. They show up everywhere, they are dangerous, and they will hurt you if you allow them to. Only approach these guys with a bow. Fire actually works really well on all the variants except for the fire one. So equipping a flame emitter to your shield is actually a very easy way to combat a like. As you can see here, I'm using the opposite element of this one, ice, in order to pick it off real easy without having to step into any of this gloom. And it makes pretty quick work of it. Don't worry about this miss. I swear I hit it. And that's everything you really need to know about likes. Now you can just enjoy me killing this fire one for free. But with that being said, let's move on to the next super easy enemy in this game. That next enemy being Arakotas. These enemies I have nothing really to talk about. They are a one-shot with almost every weapon in the game. They drop dead immediately, and for the most part, all they do is act like a giant keys that carry extra enemies into battle. That's really all these things do. Nothing to be afraid of here. So I'm not going to lie, this next enemy took me a little bit of time to finally figure out what the heck these were. I initially thought these were Dodongos because of the way they looked. They showed up near the fire temple. It was hot, we were underground, and that's just what made the most sense to me. Come to find out, this is an enemy called a Frox. And they are related to an area boss that you will find in the underground. I will be going over him in pretty great detail here towards the end of this video. But for right now, just keep in mind that these guys are super easy to kill. They die in one shot, and they drop pretty good loot, being Zonite, which is a pretty good resource that you need in the game. And that's it. Next up is an enemy that we thought was going to be Redeads when we first saw it in one of the trailers. But come to find out, next up is Gibdos. Gibdos show up during the Gerudo portion of the game and are super creepy to deal with in this game. What we thought were going to be giant undead enemies for us to kill are undead scarabs that sometimes have wings and will fly around and attack from the sky. They can only be damaged with fire or lightning attacks, where they will turn to a skeletal phase, and then after the next hit they'll usually die. What makes Gibdos super creepy is the noises they make, their shambling animations, and how they attack in absolute packs. They fall out of these giant mushroom protrusions in the middle of the desert, and if you don't defeat these mushroom areas, they will just continue to respawn and come and attack. Now, with that being said, they are fairly simple to kill. They drop amazing loot, and overall are pretty fun to kill. But the first encounter you have with Gibdos just might be one of the creepiest enemies that you run into in this game. Before we start talking about area bosses, there is one more subset of the regular enemies that I want to talk about before moving on. And that is armored enemies. If you run into anything like this bokoblin that has a yellow health bar, they are wearing armor. And what that means, and I have bad news for anyone who thinks they're going to run through this game with just the Master Sword, these enemies have to be defeated with clubs or anything like a talus hammer or anything that has been fused and can bash enemies in. Bomb flowers work as well, but bladed weapons absolutely will not. And these guys are tough. They show up on the overworld, they show up in the underground, they show up pretty much anywhere a normal enemy can. They have a slight chance to spawn in from what I'm understanding. If that's not the case, please let me know. But so far I have seen 3 enemy types. That bokoblin, this like, which was shooting stones at me, and one more that you'll see here towards the end. With that being said, stone enemies and armored enemies are not super duper hard to defeat with the one exception. But they do require you to change the way that you're doing things just a little bit in order to think and not just shoot the weak spot over and over again. And as you can see with this like, even after destroying his stone outer covering, he was still shooting giant boulders at me. But after you break through that really tough exoskeleton, he was cake. You just walk up to him and kill him per usual. It's when you start dealing with this next enemy that you'll see in just a moment where things start to get really tough, and I would highly suggest, if you see one of these, early game, run. You will not defeat this next one easily. And that next one is an armored Lionel. These guys are just as fast and just as strong as their normal counterparts. But you cannot attack them with a bladed weapon. Even with my support troops here, I had a hard time taking this sucker down. Bomb arrows only seem to tick it off. I could block its attacks like a normal Lionel, but this one also was covered in gloom. So you can see my health is just getting decimated. And he's not going to stand still for you to hit him with a club or anything like that. So unless you have perfect timing with your shield breaks, your flurry rushes, or anything like that, as you can see here, my sword is doing absolutely nothing. There is no chink in this armor. He will defeat you. And with that being said, let's move on to area bosses. First up on this boss list is going to be boss bokoblins. Now, they don't really act like a quote-unquote boss enemy, but in certain situations, they are part of a larger group called monster forces, and will represent a sizable portion of that HP bar when it shows up. While large and dumb, boss bokoblins hit like a truck. They have a large fused weapon that they keep on them, and will attack with it when threatened, taking out a large amount of your hearts in the process. However, they can be tricked by the bokoblin mask and are highly susceptible to all forms of elemental damage that you can dish out. Just attack these guys like you would a normal group of bokoblins and you should be fine. With a special side note, they will throw large boulders at you, which can be reversed at them by using recall. And once this happens, it'll stun the boss bokoblin for a second, doing chip damage and giving you a time to counterattack. You'll also know that they have a large horn that they have on them at all times, and they use this to instruct their little entourage of other bokoblins when to attack and when to retreat, suggesting that they have a little bit of intelligence. Altogether though, these guys shouldn't give you too much trouble. They're generally worth killing because they have horns that drop and they give amazing boosts to your weapons with fuse. But you literally have nothing to lose by giving these big goons a thrashing. Up next on our boss list is the Flux Construct, or as I like to call it, the Giant Soldier of Stone, because if you tell me it doesn't look like this creature on the screen right now, then I got news for you. The Flux Construct comes in 3 different forms. There's a 1, 2, and a 3, and 9 times out of 10 they are holding a chest on them that has an old map. Old maps are little icons that show up in the underground, and they usually lead you to some kind of treasure. And I mean, if that's not self-obvious, then what I can tell you is they usually bring you to the old DLC items from Breath of the Wild, like Midna's helmet or the Sheik mask. So, how do you beat these big guys? Well, there's one cube that is not like the others. Find that cube and either attack it repeatedly until the construct falls apart. You can use Ultra Hand on that cube and it will force it to fall apart. Or just start wailing on it or shoot it. These guys have 3 forms. There's a big humanoid form, which they will try to repeatedly smash you in. And then there is a giant cube form, reminiscent of some of the mini-boss fights from Mario Party, where they will roll around and try to squash Link. And if all else fails, they have a form that flies around in the sky. Now, this form is really hard to get up to, and I'll show you it here in just a second. But there's 2 ways to get up to it. It will fling a set of boxes down at you, and you can either ascend up to the form that's floating, or you can do it the funny way and jump on top of one of the boxes, use recall, and then once you get up there, start wailing on the core. Now, when you do enough damage to the core, it will completely fall apart, and that's really your chance to attack. Once you attack it enough times, it'll start to go back into a different form. As you saw there's that cube form I was talking about. And then it will drop a whole bunch of Zonai charges, Zonai devices, and most importantly, a core. Now, this core isn't anything that you can pick up and put in your inventory and use later like any of the horns that Bokoblins or Lizalfos drop. It is something that you have to use right away, or otherwise it will disappear until the next Blood Moon. But when you fuse this to any weapon, it gives that weapon a massive attack buff. So for the level 1 Flux core, it gives you a, I want to say a plus 10 buff. The level 2 gives you a plus 40 buff. And the level 3s, which only to my knowledge show up in the labyrinth mazes, I want to say they give you a plus 50 to the stats of the weapon. I have had weapons in the mid-game fused to a Flux core that have been stronger than silver and golden Lionel weapons from Breath of the Wild 1. We're talking high 70s, low 80 weapons that you can absolutely thrash in-game bosses with in this game. These guys are amazing to fight. They're pretty easy if you don't screw up climbing on them like I do all the time. And all in all, the Flux core they drop is probably the most valuable thing that you can get from them. Just so that you can boost your weapons to a stupid high level and be able to take on the higher bosses in the game. We're talking the enemy that's coming up here in a second, Gleox, Ganondorf himself, any Phantom Ganons in the game. If you have a Flux core fused to any of your weapons, especially a 2-handed Claymore, be prepared, because you are going to melt HP bars with that weapon. And just real quick before I bounce off of Flux Constructs, I did want to show this. These blocks do slide, and if they hit you, they will do a lot of damage, and if you only have 3 to 5 hearts, they will probably kill you. So, again, I don't think that you can use Ascend, although some resources have been saying that you can on this block. That's why I'm saying to use Recall and just get up here and start wailing on it. I think it's a lot safer. And you don't have to worry about potentially missing your mark, because if you use Ascend and you're not able to do it in time, you will lose your chance. It'll go into a new form. And then you'll have a harder time trying to kill this thing. Up next on our boss list is a monster that I was personally super hyped to hear that he was showing back up in Zelda. I haven't seen a Gleeok in any of the mainline Zelda games since Oracle of Seasons? Maybe Phantom Hourglass? I can't remember exactly when the last time is that I saw one, but it was in one of the 2D or 2.5D Zelda games that were on the DS. With that being said, let me introduce you to Gleeok. They come in 4 different forms in this game. The Fire and Frost Gleeok, the Thunder Gleeok, and the King Gleeok, which takes one head from each of the other elements and throws it all on the body of the same monster and basically tells you you're going to die as soon as you reach this Sky Island. I only have footage of the Thunder Gleeok right now. I'm sure I could probably get footage of the other 2 as I've defeated them. I have not defeated a King Gleeok simply because I've not found one yet. But I am here to tell you right now that they show up all over Hyrule and you should avoid them at all costs until probably the mid-game. Simply because you are not going to have enough arrows, and the one thing that you need to slap onto your arrows you probably will not have enough of, that being Keese eyeballs. Most of the stuff that I've been seeing online tells you as the player that if you're fighting a Gleeok to use a fruit, the fire, the volt, and the ice fruit to fight these guys with. And I'm here to tell you that there's a much better answer, and it is the Keese eyeballs. The heads on Gleeok are just way too small to be able to hit pinpoint without having like a Finnick bow. And as you can see right now, I just used an ancient arrow on this one. It didn't do anything damage-wise, and that's because I hit it in the body. If you're not hitting the heads of Gleeok, you are just simply not doing enough damage. The rest of the body is too well armored and hardly takes damage from anything. Now, each head takes 2 critical hit shots to be able to take down. And once you take down all 3 heads, the Gleeok will fall out of the sky, taking fall damage just as you would if you fell from that height. And it stuns it for a short amount of time, so you can run up and start bashing its heads in with whatever the best blunt force weapon is that you have at your disposal. Hopefully with a core flux core just slapped onto whatever it is. While you're fighting these guys, they're going to shoot out little laser beams of whatever their element is. So I'm here to tell you right now, if you're fighting Thunder Gleeok, be sure that you have either a really strong Forest Dweller bow, a Dragon Bone Bokoblin bow, or probably the best thing you can get is a Mighty Construct bow to fight these guys with. Each of these elemental Gleeoks start a different type of weather. Fire Gleeok make it impossible to get close to without wearing Flamebreaker armor. The Frost Gleeok does the opposite, and you need almost a full set of Rito armor to get close to it. And the Thunder Gleeok, the worst of all in my opinion, forces you to get close and personal with weapons that do not conduct electricity, which typically are not that strong unless you've been using Fuse on Zonai swords or Zonai bows. Now their main attack pattern is to fly up over the top of you and shoot down laser beams of death. They get so high up that even the Keese eyeballs just simply cannot reach them. They start to attack with these lightning bolts or fire bolts or ice bolts or whatever it is their element does, that once they get pretty. Yeah, you see it just absolutely would not reach it. Now, once they hit the ground, they cause these huge air currents, and you can fly up to them. But let me tell you now why that's a bad idea. Gleeok is going to be a lot faster than you are in the air. Your reaction time is not going to be as good, and he can just snipe you out of the air. So while you can get up close and personal with it, and maybe get a good shot on it, be careful when you do that without having a Keese eyeball, because you're going to have a bad time. For Fire and Frost Gleeoks, my recommendation is to use Ice Keese eyeballs and Fire Keese eyeballs on the opposite element of whatever Gleeok it is that you're fighting, because not only does it home in on this enemy, but it also gives you elemental damage of that type to just really drive home that you're here to kill this sucker. It does a lot more damage. It helps your critical hit damage. All in all, it's going to make life a lot easier for you. And as a last-ditch effort, because I have had situations, especially with this Gleeok that we're fighting right now, where I just simply ran out of arrows. Keep a boomerang on hand. If you're fighting anything that's not the Fire Gleeok, go ahead and hook it up with a Flame Construct to your boomerang and throw it. 9 times out of 10, you will hit the other heads and do the damage that you need to knock it out in a last-ditch effort. And if you're fighting a Fire Gleeok, use one of the other elements. Use a Lightning Construct to be able to do lightning damage to it, just to get that little bit of extra oomph on it to get the damage that you need. As you can see here, without having my eyeballs, or I don't know why I wasn't hooking a wing up to it, but without being able to hook anything to help extend your arrows up, you're simply not going to be able to reach this guy once they start lording over you up in the sky. And that's really all I have to say about Gleeoks for now. Wait until this battle's over, and I've got a little bit more to say about what it drops. Now, about Gleeok's loot. You're going to get 3 horns from this guy and 2 wings. Now, the horns you can use on a multitude of things, but I'm going to suggest that they go on top of magical rods, as they do primarily magic damage. Whatever you decide to hook them up to, though, they add 30 base damage to your weapon. And for swords, they make the sword look like it shoots out a laser beam of whatever the element is. So be sure to use these things sparingly. They are rare, but they are super powerful for your arsenal. Oh, what a beautiful day it is in Hyrule. We're almost to Hateno Village, and there's a house. Let's go on inside. I'm sure there's probably some kind of loot in here, right? Okay, just a quick hop off of Epona. Yeah, there's a chest. Okay. Ooh, a Phrenic bow. Okay, that's a little bit stronger than the one I've got. Let's go ahead and pop that in. Now if we run into anything that we really need to snipe, we should be able to. Alright. Let's start heading... What the heck is that? That's the most let me make a quick mark real quick. That is the most terrifying... Oh my goodness, the music. Oh... Run. Just run. Get me out of here, Epona. Oh my goodness. Now, what you just witnessed is the entire reason I decided that I needed to make this video. That was a Gloom Spawn, formerly known as a Floor Master in any other video game called Zelda, but these guys in particular take the cake on creepy. For starters, there's always 5 of these guys. They have the Ganon eyeball from Breath of the Wild that you used to shoot. They will outrun you. They spread gloom wherever they go and will limit the amount of hearts that you have to fight with, and will grab you and hold you, and then once you finally break free by mashing, another one will grab you in a vicious cycle until you are finally all out of hearts, or a fairy revives you only to start this vicious cycle all over again. Now, the best way that I have personally found to kill these things: A, drop bombs on them like the United States is using napalm on Vietnam. Bomb arrows are your best friends. They are the easiest way to hit all 5 of these arms at the same time, because if you don't kill them all together and you only kill, say, 4 of them and one stays alive, it will spawn 2 to 3 more, like chopping the head off of a Hydra. Then you have even more to worry about, because those HP bars are going to refill and you're not going to be able to kill them in time, and the next thing you know, everything that you've killed will come back to haunt you again. Get up high. They cannot climb rocks. They cannot climb walls. They are stuck strictly to the surface that they are on. And once you finally do nuke these guys and kill all of them, that's when your troubles have only just started. Because if you thought that the gloom spawn by itself was bad, you're not ready for the next bit. So, once you have finally nuked these things to oblivion, or better yet, gotten the Master Sword, which cuts through these arms like butter, that's when you're really in for your surprise. And you better buckle your britches, because, like I said, you are not ready for this next bit. After destroying the Gloom Hand, you're reading that correctly, Phantom Ganon shows up, and that's for every location where these guys show. Now, Phantom Ganon has one of 3 melee weapons with him. He has either a katana that he will actually use spin attacks against Link. He will do dash attacks and try to kill you that way. And then he also has a gigantic club that he will use massive physical damage attacks against you with, and a spear, which personally I believe to be the easiest weapon that he uses against you, because it's the easiest to flurry rush. Now, you can still flurry rush, you can still shield bash his weapons, that's fine. If you run too far away from him though, he will teleport up to you, or worse yet, he pulls out a gigantic longbow that he will use against you as well. Fire does not do anything to him, nor does any other elemental damage to my knowledge. This is strictly a one-on-one fight reminiscent of the end of Wind Waker, where you have to destroy this or he will destroy you. There is no running from him. There is no backing out. If you were going to do that, you needed to do it against the Gloom Spawn, because Phantom Ganon is not playing. He is here to kill. He is here to make sure that you as the hero do not leave wherever it is you are unscathed. Once you defeat him though, he does drop 2 items that are of particular note. Both of these items, once used in cooking, will give you a resistance to gloom. They are really great to use while you're in the depths. I highly recommend cooking them up as any kind of oatmeal or with steamed meat or anything that you can. And those items look like little sarcophagi. And the item is called a dark clump. So this next boss that we're going to talk about, when I first ran into him, I seriously thought he was just a gigantic boulder in the background. And till the boss music started up, that is. Phrox is an enemy that we have not seen since the Water Temple of Twilight Princess, if my memory serves correctly. In this game, he works more like Dodongo did from any of the games where Dodongo's from, notably Ocarina of Time, where he's going to be sucking in air and you're going to be chucking bombs into his gullet and he's going to blow up from the inside out. From there, you'll run up as if he was a Talus and start destroying these Zonite cores that he's got on his back. And when all the Zonite cores are dead, so will Phrox. Now, this enemy's not that simple. He's got several different attack patterns, from swallowing you up to waiting for you to literally glide into his mouth. There was one time where I was flying through the underground and found myself almost getting swallowed by a Phrox because he leapt 20 feet into the air after my wing that I was flying on. These guys do not mess around. They have a voracious hunger. They will lunge at you. They will run you into pools of gloom. They're not affected by it themselves. And your best defense is really just to wait, run, stay as far away from them as you can, and make sure that when they run at you, that you have enough time to clear them before they clobber into you. One notable thing you can do, and this is with most bosses in Zelda that have a gigantic eyeball, is that you can go ahead and shoot them. That eyeball is not just there for show. You can shoot that eyeball. It will stun the enemy immediately. You can run up, get some free hits in before you have to start all over again. But the battle loop for Phrox is very simple. Just be careful of it, because if he catches you, he's going to give you a run for your money before he finally drops his loot. Upon dying, they're going to drop their fangs and their guts, and I've seen several different kinds of these. This Phrox right here is a mostly blue Phrox, but I've also run into a white one where his fangs were not so much a hammer the way they are here, but more of a gigantic spike. And honestly, the amount of damage they add to your weapons via fuse is enormous. So if you do run into Phrox and you need some extra Zonite, go ahead and kill them, get some really good fuse materials for your weapons, and have a good time taking this boss out, because honestly, he's not super difficult. And now for the final bonus for this video. The boss for the Fire Temple, Marbled Goma. Now, which one of you really thought Goma was going to make a comeback? Because I, for one, did not. I joked about it with my buddies, but really and truthfully, I did not expect Goma to make a comeback into this game. This is another enemy that, like Leok, we have not seen in quite some time. So, seeing Goma back in the game was really nice. Especially now that she's not some forest-dwelling spider. She's a gigantic rock monster. With that being said, this monster does not stick to just its dungeon. And I don't know if any of the other temple bosses do, but I know for certain that Marble Goma makes an appearance in the underground. When you run up on her, there's a locked chest that's covered in gloom, and upon her defeat, you'll be able to open it up. In order to fight this boss, though, you have to have the Goron that decides to join your party to be able to fight her. I've tried bomb arrows. They have absolutely no effect on her legs. And the basic battle strategy here is to avoid the giant rocks that she sends out, because after a few seconds they explode, to break her legs with the Goron, and then start smacking her in that giant eyeball. You can see here I have a flux core attached to my Master Sword, and I'm just wailing away on her. Now, after you've done enough damage to her, she gets mad and goes into her second phase. And that's when she starts using what I can only describe as the move Rock Tomb from Pokemon. And I'll show you that here in just a minute, but for the meantime, there it is. When she uses this move, I was using cheats at the time. I was just trying to get through this boss, but you're going to break that open with the Goron that's with you. Or your other option is to either climb around it, or sometimes you can squeeze through a gap in them. But either way, you want to get away from them as fast as possible because you are surrounded right now by a circle of rocks that will explode on you in just a few minutes and probably take out all your hearts. As you can see here, I'm climbing over the rocks and I still have enough time to clear them, but not by much. Once you get her HP all the way down, though, she drops a pretty amazing piece of fusion material, which is a gigantic Goma Claw that adds an extra 38 damage to whatever weapon is you attach it to. And as you can see right there, bomb arrows do absolutely nothing to her. It doesn't scratch her, doesn't even do damage to her HP bar. So, be persistent, break those legs, smack her in the eyeball. This is normal Goma fight type stuff. Nothing really different from any other Goma fight we've ever done in any of the other Zelda games, but there it is. Upon defeat, she will go ahead and explode into a bloody mist. The chest unlocks. And here is the Goma Claw that she drops. It is a huge piece of fusion material. I'm going to go ahead and fuse it to my Dusk Sword. And now my sword is turned into a gigantic mallet that's now doing 70 damage, and I'm in the mid-game. Upon opening the chest, a crystalline charge is opened up, which basically gives you an extra little bit to your battery. And that's the Goma fight. So that was every enemy found in The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. What did you think? Are there any enemies that I missed that you would love to see covered? Please leave me a like and subscribe to the channel because we have a ton of new videos coming out, including full walkthroughs of every single shrine in the game and how to overcome their challenges. Comment down the bottom if you defeat any of these enemies in a way that I did not cover, and check out our new social media. We just started them out. We've got links to them in the description, and we would love to see you there. Until next time, remember to be amazing and keep gaming.